In this presentation, we're going to record a transaction related to a short-term investment. In other words, we're going to take some money out of the checking account, put it into an investment account, investments in something like stocks and bonds. Time to engage with Sage 50 Cloud Accounting. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice company. We're currently in the customer and sales section. Now we're going to be having money going out, so we're going to be thinking about, or we could start off at least with, the vendor and purchases section. This is also a transaction that's not going to happen all the time, right? We have some cash, we have excess cash, we're taking it out of the cash account, putting it into an investment account. So note that when you do that, not going to be something that happens all the time, number one. And number two, if you have excess cash, just realize that unless you're a company that is in the business of investing in, say, stocks and bonds, then oftentimes, or unless it's a benefit type of program, you want to take that excess cash and it would be going out to the owners in some way, like a dividend or something like that. Then they would invest it in a personal setting. So the idea here of taking it out of the checking account, putting it into investments, in this case, is just for short-term type of investments, right? We're going to take it out of the checking account, put it into short-term type of investments in order to generate revenue on it, investments such as stocks and bonds. So a couple ways we could do that. If it were by check, we could use the check here in order to enter that form. And if it was, on the other hand, something other than a check, we could still use this form, or we could go to the register as we saw in the past and put it directly into the register. Let's go with the check form this time. Let's go to the check, and I want to view and edit the check. So note that I'm going to maximize it. Whoops, hold on a second. I don't want to view and edit the checks. I want to go to check, and I want to say new check up top. And then I'm going to maximize the screen. Now note that instead of a check, however, I'm going to say this time it's not going to be a check. We're just going to say, I'm going to just call it cash, cash here. So it's not going to have a check number, but of course the check form, this form will then be having money go out of the checking account. So we're going to use this form, not assign a check number, and money going out of the checking account. And I might put in the reference like it's an electronic type of transfer that is happening. Now the vendor we're going to put is, I'm going to say E-Trade. Now notice we don't have E-Trade set up down below yet. We may not want to set it up as a vendor. We could, or we may not, because it's not really a vendor. So E-Trade is a company that we're putting money into. We're not really, it's like kind of like a bank or a financial institution. So maybe we don't want to put this one in as a vendor. So if we did, we could say new vendor. I'm going to say no for now. I'm going to say E-Trade. Now, E-Trade is kind of like a bank that you could put money into the stocks and bonds for, similar to if you put money into your bank or something like a Vanguard or something like that. And so I'm going to go tab, 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 and tab through this. There's the check number. Let's put the date on this. We'll make the date be, say, January 11th. So I'm going to say 011120. So 011120. I'm going to make the amount that we're going to be taking out of the checking account and into the E-Trade is 12,000. And there I'm going to say investment, maybe in the memo, investment. And then the other side of the account then is going to go to some type of investment account. Now we don't have one set up. We have the checking account, then it goes on down to the accounts receivable, and then the allowance, and then inventory. So maybe we want the checking or the investment account to be somewhere up top, maybe before the prepaid. So let's make it 1290. So 1290. I'm going to set up a new account for 1290. I'm going to say new down below, and we will set up this new account, and I'm going to put it up top and say 1290. And this is going to be investments. And just to make sure they don't have an investments account for us yet, just to double check, we have inventory. Yeah, so no investments account normally. So we'll put in investments. Now note, when you have the investments, then you got to think, well, how do you want to allocate the investments? So if it's internal purposes, you may want to put investments E-Trade, and then you can basically track out your investments to the institution, rather than going actually down to the investments, such as individual stocks and bonds and whatnot, because if you go into that much detail, it might be too much detail to be tracking. But you might want to go into the detail of just saying, hey, these are the investments within E-Trade versus my bank versus Vanguard or something like that, if you have multiple investment accounts. That way you can tie out your accounts to the investment statements and have the general overall numbers on your financial statements correct, that you could double check quickly. And you can have them more detailed by going to the investment statements themselves, going to the institutions to get the detail for them. So the account type, we're going to say is going to be like an other current asset type of account. Let's say all the way down here, other current assets. That's the one we want, not doing anything on the beginning balances. So that's what we want here. I'm going to say, let's save that. We're going to save that. I'm going to say, let's save it, and we'll actually do that too. So we're going to then close that back out. So it looks like that's what we want. So then let's pick this account up as the investments in E-Trade. Investments in E-Trade, there it is. What's going to happen when we record this? It's going to be decreasing from the checking account. Let's make sure we got the right checking account over here. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Yes. And then it's going to be the other side is going to be going into another asset account, that being an investment account that we just set up there. Let's do it. We're going to say save up top. And we're going to say, okay, yes. And the vendor E-Trade does not exist. Select the setup to create this vendor record. So they're not going to allow us to add the E-Trade without a vendor. So I'm going to say, all right, let's set them up as a vendor. And even though it's not really a vendor, it's probably best practice to set it up as a vendor anyways, because that allows us to run reports by vendor. So let's copy this. I'm going to put this in the name, and then let's make the expense account, the default expense account, be that investments. And maybe the default, well, let's put it into investments. So right here, and then I'm going to say, okay, let's say save then. And then we should be okay to record this. I'm going to say close, and let's try it again. Let's try it this time. See if they let me do it. I'm going to go yes, please. All right, let's take a look at our financial statements now. So I'm going to close this back out and take a look at the financial statements by going to the reports drop down. We're going to go on down to the financial statements. We're considering the balance sheet. That's going to be the statement that this will be dealing with. So we'll be opening up the balance sheet. Going to make that for the current period or the period of January. And then I'm going to say okay. Let's say okay. And then let's maximize this. It came out of the checking account here, and the other side is going to the asset account of investments. There's the 12,000 there. Double clicking on the checking account, we can then see that we have the amounts going out for 12,000. If we double click on that, then we see our transactions. There's our transaction, closing this back out, closing this back out. Other side, of course, in E-Trade. If we were to zoom in on that, then we see that 12,000 there as well. So I'm going to close this back out. And no effect on the income statement thus far. This is just strictly a balance sheet transaction. So that's going to be it for now. Let's get out of here.